You know, one of the most mysterious characters in Roblox stores, at least based on what I've seen, is Bob. For being just a rotting skeleton that literally does nothing but sit there, the way he is described makes it seem like he has quite a substantial amount of lore as well as overall importance to the story of the game, which is quite shocking when you really think about it. So, I decided to get digging into this character to maybe find something about their lore, and I did manage to find something that could be huge later on down the line. You see, there is more to Bob than what meets the eye, and today I'll be telling you all about his lore, more specifically, how and why he died. With all of that being said, let's begin. Alright, so I should probably explain who Bob is to start off. This character is one of the three friendly entities who you can encounter in Room 52, also known as Jeff's shop. They appear to be a rotting human skeleton wearing a cap with several flies buzzing around his head. Sitting across from Bob is his best friend El Goblino, who, as the name suggests, is a red goblin-like character who loves to chat. Every time you enter Room 52, El Goblino will have a new piece of dialogue to say, and sometimes he can give a little information about Bob. This information will be tremendously helpful going further, as it is really our only source of data about Bob, seeing how he himself is quite literally dead. So, what exactly does El Goblino say about Bob? Well, he describes their adventures in the hotel together, such as their encounters with various entities and rooms. Although, as you've probably already known, something really strange is that El Goblino always seems to refer to Bob as if he were a living human, when he obviously is very dead. The main purpose of this relationship between the characters is to create a sense of humor, as El Goblino seems convinced that this inanimate human skeleton is their best friend. However, I don't really think humor is the only goal of El Goblino's dialogue about Bob. You see, at some point Bob had to be alive in order to be dead now, and I believe that El Goblino befriended him during the time he was alive, as that explains how they had so many adventures together, as well as how El Goblino is able to describe his personality and characteristics. At some point though, Bob had to have died in the hotel, and based on El Goblino's dialogue, there are two possible ways this might have happened. El Goblino states that in one message that after Bob got stuck in a snare, he became speechless, which implies that he died in the greenhouse, likely through rush after being caught in said snare. El Goblino also states how Bob has been real quiet after not eating for a while, which could imply Bob died through starvation. Anyways, it doesn't matter how Bob died, as either way he's no longer with us, and even then El Goblino still treats him as if he were still alive, which although may seem really strange at first, it actually has a very reasonable explanation. You see, El Goblino believes that Bob is alive because the concept of true death doesn't even exist in the hotel. Now, I know that sounds really crazy when we were talking about the game where dying is the main way of progressing, but let's think about it for a little. Whenever you quote-unquote die indoors, Guiding Light or Curious Light will often bring up other times you quote-unquote died as a way of teaching you of how to do certain things. You know, whenever something canonically dies in a game, it is meant to be final. It is the point of no return. However, indoors, this is the exact opposite, where it is used as a form of progression. Even El Goblino recognizes this, as in one of his dialogue lines, he quite literally tells you, the player, to try again if you die. Death, although being canon in the story, is not final in the hotel, and it is only treated as a learning experience, which is why El Goblino doesn't think Bob is truly gone. However, with all of that being said, Bob is almost definitely truly dead, and it only takes one look at him to realize that. His body is still here decomposing, and a respawned version of the character is nowhere to be seen. I highly doubt Bob is coming back alive, if at all, and this presents us with an interesting question, that being, why did Bob die? As I had just described, death is not final in the hotel. At most, it would just be a setback, which is likely why El Goblino and Jeff hide when Rush is coming through door 52, as although they know they probably won't really be gone, it would be time-consuming to regain all that progress and get back to door 52. However, even with this knowledge, you'd think Bob wouldn't truly die because of the nature of the hotel, but this wasn't the case. Now, although we don't know for certain why Bob and only him was chosen to truly die, as there isn't enough evidence in the game to draw a conclusion yet, I do have a theory on who may be responsible for this character to be gone forever, as well as some other possible explanations. Alright, so before I get into these theories on why Bob truly died, there is a point which I need to make known. Throughout the game of Doors, it has become increasingly apparent that the light characters, such as Guiding Light, are responsible for the players' and other entities' immortality. After all, they are the face we meet after each death, and they assure us that we will come back eventually after informing us on how to do things correctly. Now, let me ask you this. If these light characters have the ability to grant immortality, shouldn't they also be able to take it away? You see, around 2 months ago, I created a Doors theory video explaining how it is very likely that there is a third light character in addition to Guiding Light and Curious Light. I highly recommend you check out that video after this one, even though it is older, because there are some great points in there. Anyways, with the evidence in the game, I have come to the conclusion in that video that this third light character is red in color, and that it is a negative force working against Guiding Light for some unknown reason. Now, seeing how this third light character directly wants to stop us players from progressing in the game, as well as how they have all the capabilities to change something like the ability to cheat death, I don't think it is out of reason to assume that they were responsible for making Bob stay dead, because of some currently unknown reason that he did. Bob could have gotten too close to the truth of the hotel, or was interfering with something this third light character wanted to do. Either way, Bob might have done something pretty major which warranted the removal of his immortality, which is pretty scary as that means it could happen to us players too. I'd love to hear your theories in the comments on what Bob may have done to get his immortality revoked. However, I guess we should be moving on. Another possible theory is that Bob might have died before the light characters really knew or cared about giving the players immortality. Based on El Goblino's dialogue, we know that Bob was alive whilst the light characters were still in the spiritual state they are in now. However, based on Curious Light's dialogue, we know that the light characters need us for something, because they always want us to come back. So it is possible that sometime after Bob's death, the light characters were put into a state of requiring players in order to accomplish certain tasks, and with how dangerous the hotel is, they gifted us immortality so we could always try again. However, Bob died before this realization was made, so he isn't able to be revived anymore, which would explain why he is still dead now. Lastly, my final theory, which let me just say is a stretch, is that Bob may be the body of one of the light characters. Now, this would explain why he doesn't have a physical revived form, as instead his consciousness would live on as a spirit. Additionally, if this were the case, we can already somewhat determine which light character Bob would be. He couldn't be Guiding Light as they are both confirmed to be opposite genders, and he can't be Curious Light because he literally saw them whilst he was still alive, so they can't be the same person. This means that Bob would most likely have to be the third evil light, and this kind of lines up with how El Goblino describes his personality, although like I said, this one is a massive stretch. Anyways, that was basically all I had to say about Bob and his lore in Roblox Doors. To summarize, Bob was an explorer in the hotel who died either in the greenhouse or through starvation. He was left to rot, all the while his best friend El Goblino still thinks he's alive because he's unfamiliar with the concept of true death. However, his death does raise a lot of questions regarding who's truly responsible for it and why did it even happen in the first place. It is quite a wild story, and I'm excited to see what the developers plan on doing to Bob in the future. With all of that being said, thank you all for watching and I hope you enjoyed.